On Wednesday, a total solar eclipse plunged parts of Europe into darkness. The rare event drew crowds outdoors, with specialist eclipse glasses selling out, and many people even travelling to Spain, Portugal or Iceland to witness it. The moon first blotted out the sun in the remote Arctic region of northern Russia. It then passed down through parts of Greenland and Iceland. The eclipse plunged western Iceland into complete darkness, although heavy cloud cover and rain blocked visibility of the sun disappearing behind the moon. Meanwhile, excitement built in Spain, where day also briefly turned into night. The country witnessed its first total solar eclipse in more than a century. But as always, the phenomenon was only short-lived. In parts of Russia and Greenland, the total eclipse lasted under 2.5 minutes. For observers in Spain, it lasted less than 2 minutes just before sunset. The partial eclipse process, however, lasted much longer, roughly 1 hour and 45 minutes, as the moon crossed the sun's path. More than half of Europe's population will be hit by another heat wave, with the thermometer climbing to over 30 degrees Celsius. It comes as once again the continent faces soaring temperatures, following back-to-back heat waves in recent months. The most intense heat is expected in Western and Southern Europe, with France, Italy and Spain among the hardest hit regions. But the heat wave also extends towards the Balkans, especially Greece and the Adriatic coast. And in the United Kingdom, the government will hold an emergency COBRA meeting in response to the extreme heat. It will mark the nation's second meeting of its sort this year. Scientists have blamed the growing heat waves on human-caused climate change. Europe is the world's fastest warming continent. The repeated heat waves have fueled widespread drought and intense wildfires this year.
Standing 8 hours per day in an archaeological site with no shade, or leading a city tour by 30 degrees in the midst of the touristic season, and while Europe is facing record-breaking temperatures, several tourist guides warned they are on the front line during heat waves, and they faced the consequences. Last summer, a 56-year-old guide died after collapsing while leading a visit of the Colosseum in Rome in scorching heat.
Cet après-midi, je vous en parle même pas. On a été à Pérouge, qui est une petite ville médiévale là, qui est au nord-est de Lyon, et il fait plus de 40 degrés au soleil, enfin, c'est assez compliqué.
The French guide says while self-employed tourist guides may ask their customers to cancel or postpone the visit because of the heat, it is often not an option for guides working for intermediaries, since the visits are sometimes booked well in advance.
La plupart du temps, on travaille pour une agence, un tour opérateur, un croisiériste, enfin, ça peut être très varié, comme je disais avant. Et là, c'est eux qui choisissent, très clairement, et la plupart du temps, c'est pas annulé. Mais ça arrive.
Instead of cancelling a visit, some of his colleagues have, for instance, asked their employers to turn a bike tour into a bus tour, or to replace a walking tour of the city by a visit of an air-conditioned museum. Gabriel says these changes are also in the interest of the visitors, as most of his customers are above 60 years old and some do not support the heat. Meanwhile, while the UK is set to face its hottest summer on record, the head of training for the European Federation of Tourist Guide Associations says sites should extend their opening hours to allow early and late visits during the coolest part of the day.
In Greece, a lot of museums and open-air sites open very early in the morning, and they remain open until 8, 9 o'clock in the evening. So people can visit at times which are more comfortable, rather than in the midday sun.
Themis also encourages museums and sites to build covers for groups to wait in the shade while queuing to enter or when stopping for explanations. Other solutions include distributing water bottles, increasing the number of public water fountains, and installing misters to cool visitors down. While heat waves are set to become more intense and more frequent due to climate change, visitors could also favor a trip in May or September rather than at the height of summer.
The severe drought that has plagued Europe this summer has now also affected the grape harvest in Hungary's most famous wine region. Grapes are smaller and vines struggling to survive due to high temperatures in the Villani wine region, causing the harvest to start sooner than normal.
Most már lassan kénytelenek vagyunk hozzászokni, hogy elég komoly aszály van. Hát nem csak nálunk országos szinten, most már nagyon kéne egy kis eső, főleg a melegebb dűlőkben érzik az ültetvények, hogy nem csak a talajba hiányzik jelentős mennyiségű csapadék, hanem a légkörbe sincs.
Expertise is important in the winemaking business, but even seasoned farmers are powerless against the forces of nature. Though the wine's quality is not expected to be seriously compromised, the quantity of grapes ready for harvest is expected to be around 30% lower than in previous years.
Most hízna a bogyó, most telne föl vízzel a bogyó, és látjuk, hogy az aszály miatt, a szárazság miatt, hogy kicsik és többettek a fürtök, a szemek. Főleg ez a késői fajtáknál, a késérési fajtáknál lesz nagy probléma.
In the previous years, the harvest of red grape varieties in Villani began in early September, but this year it is expected to start earlier. Exactly when will depend on the progress of the forced ripening caused by the drought.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has threatened to seize ships belonging to European countries in retaliation for plans to intercept and seize Russian vessels suspected of being part of Moscow's so-called shadow fleet. New sanctions passed last month now permit EU members to sell the oil or any other cargo seized from these vessels. Putin slammed the move, calling it piracy.
Мы видим, что власти некоторых стран в нарушении международного морского права пытаются ограничить движение судов наших эконом-операторов. Мирно, подчеркну. А недавно додумались до возможности захвата наших судов и продажи награбленного у нас имущества. Разумеется, это не что иное, как пиратство и разбой. И если это на практике начнет реализовываться, мы вынуждены будем отвечать зеркально.
Several European countries have intercepted ships that were carrying Russian oil or other cargo. These vessels are often old and in poor condition and are used to circumvent Western sanctions on Russia. One of such vessels seized was a Russian ship suspected of transporting grain from occupied Ukraine. Swedish court documents showed Stockholm will transfer the ship to Kyiv.
Russia launched nearly 140 drones and multiple missiles in overnight attacks on Ukraine, according to authorities. At least 2 people were killed, including a woman whose house was hit, and 2 were injured in strikes on the city of Kherson. In the southeastern city of Zaporizhia, firefighters were tackling a fire at a shopping mall following a Russian strike, according to Ukraine's state emergency services. Also in the south, another Russian attack on Odessa caused a fire in a multi-story residential building. According to Ukraine's armed forces, 112 of the drones were neutralized. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drone strikes on Russia's Novorossiysk killed 2 people, including an 8-year-old child, as well as wounding 8 people, according to the regional governor. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Kyiv had carried out a unique operation targeting the naval base in Novorossiysk, the last major stronghold of the Russian fleet in the Black Sea. Russia shot down 502 Ukrainian drones across its territory and the Black Sea overnight, its defense ministry said in a statement. Germany has approved a draft law to reform the legal framework governing the intelligence services. The aim is to improve efforts to combat terrorism and extremism. Nina Walken, Chief of Staff to the Chancellor, says she is worried about the future of Germany and its democracy.
Ständig Ziel hybrider Angriffe fremder Mächte, und das ist eine reale, eine sehr akute Gefahr. Ja, es ist eine Gefahr für unsere freie Gesellschaft, unser Werteverständnis, unsere Sicherheit und damit genau das, was unser Land in seinem Fundament ausmacht. Und bislang, das muss man objektiv festhalten, haben wir uns in zu vielen sicherheitsrelevanten Bereichen darauf verlassen, dass unsere Sicherheit von unseren Partnern mit gewährleistet wird.
In future, the authorities are to be allowed to intervene actively, for example in response to cyber attacks and disinformation campaigns targeting Germany. Intelligence services would also get more powers to access laptops, cell phones and other devices and store the data. Meanwhile, some, including the Green Party intelligence expert Konstantin van Notz, said that although the reform was urgently necessary, the government's plans go too far. Modern Germany remains highly sensitive to data protection, shaped by memories of Nazi and later by communist East Germany's secret police.
A new index ranking the best countries and territories to relocate to in 2026 has just been released, and a Baltic state has come out on top. Estonia ranked first globally in the index thanks to its banking infrastructure, business opportunities and property rights for non-citizens. The index scores 192 countries across 24 metrics, which are grouped into 4 categories: financial and tax, livability and health, safety and stability, and settling and opportunity. In each metric, a country is rated out of 100. Estonia was rated 99 out of 100 for its currency and banking, 96 for business opportunities, 82 for housing affordability, 86 for green spaces, and 77 for street safety. Its poorest metric was climate comfort, with 20 out of 100 due to its cold, dark winters. 5 countries in Europe made the top 10 in the Global Relocation Index, with the next highest after Estonia being Portugal in 4th place.